Hi everyone, I'm Ali Greymond. So today I wanted to talk to you about the three things your family can do to help you recover. I find this video is very important because I get a lot of messages asking from family members or from friends, what can I do to help? So this video kind of addresses that. So, first thing is the family friends must not give you reassurance. And this is kind of a pact, so to speak, that you have to make with them, because so that nobody feels bad. Because when the emotions are kind of flying high, it's much more difficult, right? But when you are feeling more or less level headed, they are not, kind of in a any kind of a mood or any kind of a, kind of negative attitude or anything like that. When everybody feels good, having a calm conversation that, okay, when I feel bad, I will ask for reassurance. You cannot give it. Or if you are a family member listening to this, talking to the person who has OCD and say, I've listened to this show. It's really not productive. If I do reassurance because it gets you deeper in, I'm going to try not to give you reassurance unless you really, really need it. And this is the other thing is that it doesn't have to be an all or nothing situation. What I do a lot right now with clients is giving it a certain time period. So, for example, okay, if I still feel bad about this thought in a week, I'm going to ask for reassurance. This is actually very helpful with relationship OCD, where the person is asking the partner a lot. So, okay, I'm going to give it a week. If in a week it still bothers me, then I will ask, but I will not ask right now. And that way, the person is creating distance between themselves and the reassurance, right? So they're saying they're delaying it. They're putting the recovery first. They're showing their brain that the thought doesn't matter that much, that I can delay it. So that's a very good signal to say to the brain. It's the next step would be to refuse the thought completely, but a lot of the times, especially when the person is starting out in the recovery, it's a little bit difficult. So having a plan, and then no, we're sticking to the plan. Is this your one thing that you're gonna ask for in, say, a week or whatever amount of time? And then increasing as you start to feel better, increasing that amount of time. So I'm not going to ask anything for 2 weeks or whatever. So, and then that way it's talked about. So when the person does decide to ask something because it is overwhelming, the other person doesn't get mad. The person who doesn't have OCD doesn't get mad because this has been discussed before. So this was the agreement, and then we're just going with the agreement, right? So I find that to be really helpful. And this kind of leads me into the next point of, you have to understand, as a family member or friend of a person who has OCD, you need to understand that OCD is extremely difficult. The person may seem like they are bothering you, or they're maybe, I don't know if you find them annoying because they're asking the same questions over and over again, or doing the same compulsions over and over again. But you have to understand how difficult it is for the person who has OCD. It's not like they don't understand that what they're doing is uh, not something that most people do. They get that, but they can't stop because the fear is so high. They understand that, they sound silly asking this question, but they kind of understand that they sound silly, but it's that what if it's real and I feel like I need to make sure, so it's not, if it wasn't monumentally important, if it didn't feel like a life or death question, they would not be bothering you in whatever way you feel that you're bothered. So really, and I see a lot of almost, almost in every situation, I see kind of anger and resentment and all of this kind of stuff starts to build within the family. I would say, well, maybe not in every situation. Like, I would say maybe, okay, like, let's say 50 to 70% of the time, which is, extremely high. And it's just, I find that a lot of it too is because the person starts to look unreliable to the family, right? And in the family, everybody depends on each other. So if one person looks unreliable, subconsciously, they start to have a resentment because the load that they were supposed, like, this is from the eyes of somebody who doesn't have OCD, like from the family member's eyes, right? That now everybody else has to pick up, the slack for this person who has OCD, and why can't you just get over it? This is kind of the attitude, but you have to understand that this person is trying their best to get over it. They're doing absolutely everything they can, in the given day. And some days all they can do is literally just get out of bed because of how hard it's weighing on them. These thoughts or these compulsions, like the urge to do the compulsions or the urge to analyze, is weighing on them. So, you know, try to um, look at them as a person who didn't ask for this. Just like any physical illness, any physical, disability, right? Like they didn't ask for this. This happened to them. It could have happened to you, it could have happened to anyone else. It happened to happen to them, you know and they are doing their best to try to get out of it. So they need your support right now. Your support in, not again, not asking for reassurance, not giving them reassurance, but just being there for them and not getting angry, not getting frustrated, as much as you possibly can. I get that there's frustrating moments, you know but you have to keep it together as much as possible, because just for them, believe me, they do notice and they do appreciate it, even if to you it seems like they don't notice it, they don't appreciate how much you're doing for them. So really understanding that. um and the third thing is, as much as possible, you know when I help clients, right, I like to work with the family a lot, because I am a coach. I'm coaching them in sessions. So if we're talking every day, I'm coaching them every day or every other day. But that's still only an hour a day, you know? And your family is around you 24 hours a day, you know? So if they can push you or at least be on the same page, right? I'm kind of like switching from the person who is suffering with OCD to the family members. So I hope you know who I'm talking about at any given moment. But if the family members support the person who's dealing with OCD and saying, okay, let's just do this exposure. Let's just try it. Okay. Let's just do, okay, you can't do the exposure. Let's do half of the exposure. Let's do like a light version of the exposure, you know, and being the motivator and being the cheerleader and making sure that the person is making at least that 5% a day improvements, you know and this is a big task to take on. So that might be not, I would say, most families don't operate like this. So if you're a person listening who has OCD and thinking, well, my family would not support me like this, you know, the sad truth of it is that most families do not support people like this. So if you do have a family that's extremely supportive and extremely helpful, again, not in the reassurance way, but in the way of helping you get out of it, that's a rarity, um, but if you can just even like take 15 minutes out of your day, like I'm talking now to the person, who, like, to the family member of a person who has OCD. If you can take out 15 minutes of the day and say, okay, for these 15 minutes, let's do exposures. Let's just do it. Doesn't matter. Let's go for it. You know, it really helps, and it is just that 5% that they need, because then they can, after a while, they'll be able to do it by themselves and they'll start to build on that success. But in the beginning, it's the hardest, so if you can support them through it, you can fix everything in terms of the situation in the family, and in the sense, you know um you can also feel closer to the person. I mean, maybe that's kind of a little bit um too much, in terms of asking, because honestly I see OCD being destructive rather than something that brings people closer, but the hope is there that that would happen, and any support, any help that you offer is appreciated. um, I'm sure anybody who is, listening to this, who's close to recovery, knows that, when they were really bad, who was there for them and who wasn't. And I can tell you, I've been recovered for 10 years, and I still remember who was there for me and who wasn't. You know, so it's something that will stick with it, with the person. So it's important for you to help them, and there's a fine line with that too. You want to help them, but you want to make sure that you don't become the crutch, in the sense that they can't function without you, right? So help, but then they have to do stuff on their own. Help, and then again they have to do stuff on their own, but because you are much closer to them than your therapist, your doctor, whoever, you know um it's much easier for you to catch it. For example, a lot of the times, family members will say, uh, I can see the person's, even like the way they look changes, right? Like the way their gaze changes, how they're interacting changes. So you can tell when the person is starting to get into an OCD thought. So in that moment, if you say like, wait a minute, you shouldn't be doing this. I can see you're analyzing. Stop it right now. What can we do for you to stop it? Let's go do something. Let's go around the block. You can't do this. Remember, you're going to get worse if you do this, right? And you kind of remind them why they need to be fighting right now, and if they say, well, no, I want to lay down, I feel so bad. No, 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 we're not laying down, Ricky. We got to keep going. Let's go do something, like those kinds of things, because it is only, you only need that little bit, that 5% a day, and then the next day 10%, the next day 15%. And little by little, they start to feel better. They start to get out of it. So there is a lot that the family can do. And if you are a parent uh, who has a child who's dealing with OCD, this, everything I said, works for kids. I do work with kids. Well, usually when I work with kids, I work with the entire family, obviously. And usually we have separate discussions with the parents, and then separate sessions with parents and kids, just so we can discuss kind of like the goings on with the parents a little bit more, and then with the child we discuss more the situations uh, that the person that the child is going through in the day. So, but I would say in terms of children, same thing goes, but because they are much more fragile, um, in terms of pushing the child to do more exposures, uh, I would just be more careful with that, and just, let's take it a little bit slower, and, make sure that, we're staying safe, because the mind is much more fragile. So that's all from me for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. If you would like to do the recovery program, all the information is on youhaveocd.com. Thank you for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.